We are the heroes of the night, to hell with the active might. Fight, 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 fighty, nighty, night.
Welcome to the Museum of Aviation's exhibit, the Tuskegee Airmen, A Proud Heritage. It is one of the largest exhibits about the Tuskegee Airmen in the country. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is important and inspirational, and tells of freedom-loving Americans who overcame great obstacles, including segregation and discrimination, through determination, hard work, and excellence. During World War II, nearly 1,000 African Americans became military pilots at Tuskegee, Alabama. They were known as the Tuskegee Airmen. In 1939, with war looming on the horizon, the United States government started a civilian pilot training program at colleges across the country to build up a reserve of qualified pilots for military service. In 1940, Charles Alfred Anderson became the head of the civilian pilot training program at the Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. Anderson was known as Chief by the pilots he trained. Tuskegee Institute provided pre-flight ground school and primary flight training. Ground school was rigorous and included meteorology, navigation, and instrument training. Primary flying school was accomplished at Tuskegee Institute's Moton Field, where cadets learned the fundamentals of flying from civilian instructors like Chief Anderson. After primary flying school, cadets went to nearby Tuskegee Army Airfield for basic and advanced flight training from military instructors. Exhibit dioramas show life in the barracks and the classroom. The barracks were simple, with few furnishings and no privacy. After long, full days of training and studying, cadets were glad to go to bed at night. The Link Trainer was the sophisticated flight simulator of the time. An instructor sat at the desk and transmitted radio instructions to the student in the Link. Inside the cockpit, the student relied on his instruments to fly the Link through various maneuvers, while his navigational course was traced on a map at the desk. One of the first African American aviation cadets was Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. Davis, a graduate of West Point, became the U.S. Air Force's first African American general officer. He retired as a lieutenant general, but in 1998 received his 4th star from President Bill Clinton. The first Tuskegee Airmen were organized into the 99th Fighter Squadron, with Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. as the first African American commander. In 1943, the 99th Fighter Squadron deployed to Tunisia in North Africa. In Tunisia, the 99th flew combat missions against the German Air Force. Later, the 99th moved to the island of Sicily, and then finally to Italy. In 1944, the 99th became part of a larger unit, the 332nd Fighter Group. The 332nd was made up of 4 squadrons, all manned entirely by African Americans. The Tuskegee Airmen flew several different types of airplanes, but they are most famous for the P-51 Mustang. The tails of the 332nd Fighter Group's Mustangs were painted red, and so they became known as the Red Tails.
We want the bomber crews to know who is escorting them. We want the Germans to know when we are airborne. Therefore, why don't we paint these tails red?
The Tuskegee Airmen were skilled, disciplined pilots and became famous for doing excellent work. One of their jobs was protecting heavy bombers from German fighter planes. The Tuskegee Airmen gained such a reputation for protecting bombers that the all-white bomber crews started asking for the Red Tails to fly with them. More than 10,000 African Americans worked to support the pilots. They served in many jobs, such as aircraft mechanics, supply clerks, doctors and nurses, photographers, and cooks. So the Tuskegee Airmen were not only the pilots, but also the support personnel. Aircraft maintenance crews played a special role in the success of the Tuskegee Airmen. They trained diligently and proved that African Americans could maintain the sophisticated trainer and fighter aircraft used in World War II. African American women also shared in the Tuskegee experience. Serving mainly in the Army Nurse Corps, these women helped their country in spite of racial and gender discrimination. Another group of Tuskegee Airmen were assigned to the 477th Bomb Group. The 477th used twin-engine B-25 Mitchell bombers. The 477th was not used in combat. Instead, the men of the 477th became famous for fighting segregation at their base near Seymour, Indiana, ironically named Freeman Field. The Vultee BT-13 Valiant was the U.S. Army Air Force's most widely used basic trainer during World War II, and was used by the Tuskegee Airmen at Tuskegee Army Airfield. The Valiant earned the nickname Vultee Vibrator from its pilots because the airplane would shake at low speeds. Because African American military units like the Tuskegee Airmen were so good at their jobs, leaders in the military and government realized that having separate units for African Americans was not right. On July 26, 1948, President Harry Truman signed an order that ended segregation in the military. Within a year of that order, the Air Force became the first military service to end segregation. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen lives on today through the U.S. Air Force's 332nd Air Expeditionary Wing and the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. The Major General Joseph A. McNeil chapter of Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated honors the accomplishments and perpetuates the history of the Tuskegee Airmen here in Middle Georgia. We hope you enjoy the exhibit, The Tuskegee Airmen, A Proud Heritage, and find inspiration in this great American story.